For 4 years, the public testimony from the State Capture Commission dominated news headlines. It's now a year since the Commission wrapped up its work with that report. So what progress has really been made in bringing those responsible to book? The Gupta brothers, implicated in massive corruption at Transnet, Eskom and other state entities, have evaded extradition. Former President Jacob Zuma, accused of presiding over and sanctioning the orchestrated looting of public money, is yet to answer even to the arms deal corruption scandal, which occurred over 20 years ago, let alone this one. Let's speak now to Karam Singh of the organisation Corruption Watch, and also Rudie, Heyneke, Portfolio Manager for OUTA, the organisation undoing tax abuse. Good evening to both of you. Thanks so much for your time. I'll start with you, Karam. You know, when you listen to Chief Justice Zondo, it just takes you back to those hours and hours of testimony. There was so much information. Are we being impatient that not a lot has happened in the last year? Are we being unfairly impatient on the NPA, on our government, or could more have been done?
I don't think we're being too impatient, Sally. But I think we have to realize that, in terms of tracking the implementation of the over 300 recommendations, that we've seen very little in the way of direct communication from the president about where we are in relationship to these, the implementation of these recommendations. So, what's come to my attention is that there is quite a lot that has happened. The MPA have enrolled a number of cases, although none have been successfully prosecuted to date. There's numerous pieces of legislation that respond directly to Zondo Commission recommendations that are either with Cabinet or in process of going to Parliament. But we don't get any real direct communication from the presidency following the release of their report of how they would respond to the recommendations. And I think it's time now for the president to now come before the public again, take us into his confidence and give us an update on where we are, because there's quite a lot that's happening. It's just not being properly communicated to the public.
Yeah, and really to bring you in, of course, there is so much in this commission report. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of court cases that could emanate from this. One that is slowly grinding through the justice system is that linking Brian Molefe and others to state capture at Transnet. And that's a really big story, but it's still in the early stages. The one case that was actually at the trial stage, which is the New Lane case, linking to the Estina dairy farm, that has collapsed. And the real worry is whether we have the capacity to successfully bring all this information into evidence, into enough evidence to create successful prosecutions. How are we doing in your view?
Well, like Karam said, a few cases have been enrolled. I think something like 34, more than 160 people before court as suspects. But it has been a long time, and I think one must have, some kind of sympathy for the NPA and for the ID. The ID is still waiting to be established as a permanent fixture in the NPA, and that, is also a problem for them. We had a meeting with Advocate Andrea Johnson a few weeks ago, and that is a real issue for them because they don't have the powers to investigate as, the Scorpions, for example, had previously. So that is a problem for them. But we are, years down the line. We only saw in public, during the commission, according to information that we have, around about 10% of all the information that was submitted to the commission that became public and was part of the hearings. The question is, what happened to the other 90% of the information that was gathered by the investigators? And where is it now? Who's the custodian? Will we as civil society have access to that? Because I do believe that there's a lot more in that information that did not become public, during the commission. Coming back to, the criminal cases, I think the other thing that we must also understand is that we cannot only rely on the National Prosecuting Authority and on the police to investigate these matters. there are other bodies that must, come to the party as well. We're talking about professional oversight bodies, and it was a welcome relief to see that SAICA, for example, took action against Yaki Quinona a while ago. But that is just one of many cases, So there's other industries and other partners in fighting corruption that must come to the party and must do their bit as well. Business, professional oversight bodies, the banks, etc.
Karam, are we still at risk of another state capture project? And the suggestions are that we are, but at the same time, state capture points ultimately to one man who would allegedly say, these people are my friends, do what they ask. And that is Jacob Zuma speaking about the Gupta family, but also speaking about Bosasa. Without that kingpin, could state capture happen again?
Absolutely, Sally. And, some would say that we still haven't effectively turned a corner to say that we're out of the grips of state capture. We have implicated persons sitting within cabinet, implicated at the Zondo Commission, and the president hasn't taken any action on them. Depending on what happens in national elections next year, if we have another majority for the existing ruling party, if the recommendations from the Zondo Commission for future-proofing our democracy are not effectively implemented, and it's going to be difficult for this parliament to put through the significant pieces of legislation that are going to be required, then there's no doubt that there's still significant vulnerability within the system for different forms of state capture to take place. And I want to take up Rudie's point about the reams and reams of evidence that the commission didn't even deal with. Raymond Zondo said in the foreword to the report that if he were to investigate every single allegation of state capture from provincial governments, from local government, that it would have taken the commission 10 years to do its work. So, we've still got significant challenges. We've still got significant vulnerabilities. And, we do see progress being made in terms of, small steps being taken at SOEs, at Eskom, at Transnet. But just, the story that you were running before this one, we see that Eskom is still, dealing with significant challenges and new allegations of wide-scale grand corruption. So no doubt that there's still significant vulnerabilities within the system.
Yeah, and really, it's interesting what Karam said about, now we've seen the head of security at Eskom, she's on precautionary suspension. Lots of questions about this awarding of this thing. We don't know yet whether it was done in line with the PFMA. But it strikes me as well that a vacuum was created. When you take out the good people who know how to do the job ethically and who know the rules and stick to the rules, and you replace them with people who are prepared to take a bribe, you not only steal taxpayers' money, you not only deny people the services they want, but you create a culture and a vacuum for other bad actors to step in. And I'm just wondering if laws are as important as some sort of ethical, moral renewal. And perhaps we need both at the same time. Do you think our country is at a stage where it's not just about getting the Guptas back, but it's about somehow having this complete reinvention?
Absolutely. That reinvention, reform that you're talking about is so necessary. And for that, like I said before, you cannot just rely on law enforcement and prosecuting authorities. As a country, as a nation, as business people doing business with government and with the state and state institutions, all of us must take responsibility to work towards ethical and ethical business and people with doing business with people with integrity. One of the recommendations of the Chief Justice was that there should be a public procurement anti-corruption council that must be appointed. And referring to your previous guest as well, we know that procurement plays a huge role in corruption at state entities. And if we do not, start looking at that very, very urgently and make the changes as a collective and in a collective effort,
Yeah.
we're not going to see the changes. You asked Karam the question, is this the end? Are we going to see this again? If we do not reform, if we do not make those changes, we will definitely see state capture 2.0, 3.0, and so forth.
Karam, final question to you. There are so many priorities, so many things to investigate. I would imagine that the authorities really have to pick and choose what they have capacity for. So if you were to advise them, what would it be? Would it be, let's focus on getting the Guptas back, because that will signal to everybody who was involved that even the big fish are not immune? Or would it be, let's follow the money around where the Swifambo Prasa deal for those 2 tall trains, let's follow the money that seemed to at some point point towards the ANC, but it has not, to my knowledge, been followed up on? Or would it be just keep tinkering away at the small wins wherever they can be found?
Sally, I think we need a multi-pronged approach. We know that significant efforts have been put into trying to bring the Guptas back. That is not something which is completely within the control of the Department of Justice, of the MPA. They have to rely upon the assistance of other countries and other jurisdictions. I think, we need to learn lessons from the New Lane investment case, the first case that the MPA enrolled that was not successful. We need to find out ways in which the evidence from the Zondo Commission is easily made admissible in court. And then they need to pursue these cases, these seminal cases that have already been enrolled from Eskom, from Transnet, and others. These are high-profile cases involving high-profile individuals who've been implicated in serious wrongdoing, corruption, state capture. So I think, the focus on those cases is absolutely critical. But the MPA also must address issues around its capacity and its wherewithal to really drive these cases, because we haven't seen a successful prosecution of a prominent senior person for some time. And until the MPA can at least drive one of these cases home, I think there's going to be serious doubts that we're going to have about their capacity to effectively do it.
Oh, thanks very much to both of you. Really appreciate your time. That's Karam Singh of the organisation Corruption Watch, and Rudie Heyneke, Portfolio Manager for OUTA, the organisation undoing tax abuse. Of course, speaking to us about 1 year since the State Capture Commission wrapped up its work. Now, still